So I have a friend who used to work at MIT in the early 90s. And it was when the World Wide Web had just been invented. And through his work there, he ended up creating one of the first 100 websites ever. And he told me that at the time, when you made a website, you would send an email to Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, and he would list your website on his website of all the websites. Now, it turns out you can't do that anymore. Tim hasn't replied to any of my emails. There are more than 100 websites now. And I love how 2 or 3 people are still making notes at that point. More than 100. That's about the caliber of this talk. So there are more than 100 websites now. We can build a great site, we can build a great app, we can build a great product. People won't just show up to it, right? And this was something that I'd learned over the years. And it's something that kind of we'd put things in place to try and make our launch work and bring people in, and it did. What we didn't realize is that that's not all there is to it. Sometimes even if you have a decent launch, there's more obstacles ahead. It's not all plain sailing. And I think some other people in here have experienced something similar. So that's something I want to talk about today. I want to talk about our journey over the last year or two building RightMessage. And it's a story with some ups and downs, as you can probably tell from the title. So I want to split it into 3 parts. First part is the launch, which I think went pretty well. We were happy with it. And so I'm going to go over some of the things that we did that I think contributed to it working. This is a selfie of me on launch day. We were happy. I'm then going to talk a little bit about what happened after launch, because after launch, things kind of plateaued. Things didn't go quite how we wanted. It was more this and this and this. You may recognize some of these faces from your own startup. There was a lot of that final one. And I'm going to kind of talk about why that happened. Like I say, I think other people have maybe seen that happen. And maybe what we can do about it. And so part 3 is we were able to kind of learn a lot from that. We were able to rebuild. We were able to kind of start up and to the right again in a more kind of sustainable way. So I'm going to walk through those things. So first of all, I didn't always know I wanted to work in software. When I was about 5 years old, someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I told them I wanted to be a librarian in the daytime and a stripper at night. This is true. So my parents were kind of relieved when I went into a software business instead, and because they don't like books. And so I worked in kind of software consulting, marketing consulting. I have run RightMessage as my second SaaS that made any money. So I've kind of bounced between those. And a couple of years ago, my friend Brennan Dunn and I launched RightMessage. Some of you probably know Brennan. He's been, I think, at 15 MicroConfs, so you may have crossed paths. It's a lot. Has anyone already heard of RightMessage before this conference? People new? Okay, awesome. So for everyone else, briefly, RightMessage is a website personalization platform. The idea is that the different people who come to your website have different needs, and if you can figure out what those needs are, you can segment people into those needs. You can tailor the marketing that you show them to resonate with those needs, and your conversion rates go up, and everyone is happy. It's a marketing tool. It plugs into your website. And that's what it does. So long before we were talking about building a SaaS, this is kind of the first bit that's relevant. These are some tweets from 2015, 2016, 2017, from Brennan and from myself, where we hadn't even thought of building a SaaS. We hadn't had plans to build a SaaS. We were just kind of consulting in this space, and Brennan was doing some things for his own info product website, and that he was trying some of this personalization. We were both seeing it working really well. But we weren't setting out to build a SaaS. And I think that's kind of relevant because one of the things that sometimes doesn't work is to decide you're going to build a SaaS and then build it and then try and find the audience. We weren't trying to build a SaaS at all. We weren't trying to do anything like that. we were just kind of seeing some stuff that worked in a space that we were both working in, and we were yelling to everyone about what we were doing. We were showing everyone what we were doing, and some people started following along. And I think without realizing it, we were kind of starting to follow like this MicroConf playbook, right? This idea of like looking, do you have an audience first of all before you start just setting out to build something? And it got to the point, these people that were following along with what we were doing, we started to see that there might be this market for a SaaS. Like people wanted a way of doing what we were talking about without writing code and that kind of thing. And we still kind of said, we don't want to build a SaaS unless it's definitely the right thing to do. And so we decided that we would kind of test the water, and if we were going to do this, we were going to pre-sell it first. And so we said, we are not writing a line of code unless we can get $10,000 of pre-order money in the bank. And we sent out this email to the people that had been starting to follow along, and kind of saying, we're thinking of doing this. If you want in, you can pay some money in advance. It'll be a discount on what the final price would be. We said, we'll help you get set up. It's like free consulting. There's a money-back guarantee. We'll send you monthly reports of how everything's working. Even those monthly reports we were trying to build as little code as possible. So we were like, even if we do this, those monthly reports, which are now a proper part of the product at that time, we just piped everything into Mixpanel and took screenshots and emailed them to these people. So we were kind of trying to build as little as possible. So we were doing those pre-sales. And it's another one of those things that you sometimes hear about at MicroConf. And we did get the pre-sale money, and we started to build this thing. And it was a little side project. And this was we started just building in the open. Again, another kind of thing you hear from time to time, or again and again at MicroConf. We started to just send screenshots like, this is what we're working on. This is how it looks at the moment. Some of them were really crude. I mean, this was really, really basic. This literally says RightMessage logo in the corner. There was a lot we hadn't done yet, but we were just sharing everything, and it helped build that audience more and more. And when we weren't sure what to do with a feature, we weren't sure what to do with something, we'd ask. We had these people that we could ask now. So we'd say, we're not sure whether, would this be better for you? Would that be better? And people would comment, and it just helped keep us going in the right direction, kind of gave us more confidence we were building the right thing. And it was great for motivation as well, because we'd post something and we'd get messages back, this sounds so amazing. This is extremely powerful. I'm sitting here with goosebumps. You guys rock, heart eyes emoji, open HTML nerd tag, man crush, close HTML nerd tag. I'm not even sure what that means, but people seemed happy. And there were other things, we had the landing page, we had the email list, we were building up all this stuff, and I mean, it works, it helps, it got us a lot of attention, and it helped kind of keep us on track a little bit. And then we got this email. This was from the CEO of one of our first customers, our pre-launch customers, where they basically said, do you want to take investment? We've been following what you're doing. If I could convince you to raise, this is my favorite part, $500,000 or $1 million or whatever to help you grow. And it starts with suspect the answer is no, because they knew that we were bootstrappers, we'd always bootstrapped. And we were going to say no, because we were bootstrappers and we always bootstrapped. But we thought, it's kind of naive to just decide, we don't like investment, so we're not going to do it. And so we took a step back and we said, why have we never done that before? What are our concerns with it? And we replied to him and we said, these are some of the things, this is why we are leaning towards no, and I'm sure you've seen these or you've heard of these or you've seen companies do things like this. We said we don't want to give up all the control. We don't want to give out board seats and have investors that are telling us what we have to do. And the response was, okay, there will be no board seats. You'll keep full control. And we're like, okay, that's helpful. But we want to we want to stay loyal to our customers. We've seen other businesses where they take investment and now they have to do things to please the shareholders, and it's not always in the customer's interest, and we don't like that. And he was like, fine, there will be they won't have any, the investors won't have any say day to day. You'll keep doing what's best for your customers. And we're like, yeah, well, what about we're going to have to put together a pitch deck. We're going to have to go and find these, convince these investors. It's time consuming. And he said, I've got the investors. I can get them. I have investors in my company. I'll do everything. You won't lift a finger. And at that point, we're like, okay, he'd taken out all the reasons why we were anti the things that come along with investment. And we're like, this kind of makes sense then. It's going to help us grow. We can go full time. We can build this faster. We can build a little team to accelerate things. And so we took the money and we launched beginning of January. We hired a few people, sped things up. Beginning of January, we launched, and this was kind of MRR at the beginning. We launched to about $7,500 MRR. We had about 75 grand, because a lot of it was annuals and pre-launch and so on. So about 75 grand of revenue at that point total, and 7.5 grand monthly. And we were happy. This was great. This was what we wanted. And the following month, so February, kind of flatlined, and we were like, that's normal. We've seen that happen. Everyone who has been following along has now bought, the ones who want to. The next month that's okay. And we watched this happen. The next month, we're like, okay, we've got a bit more. And then this, and then this. And we're like, okay, we've done something right. We're at almost 20K, just under 20K revenue 4 months after launch, MRR, monthly revenue. We're like, this is great. We're going to be retiring soon. This is going to be us on a boat with, I think, T-Pain, apparently. That's, it's going to be great. 20K MRR 4 months after launch, party, right? And there were a couple of problems brewing. The first one in itself isn't necessarily a problem, but it's that 20K, we were not profitable yet. We were spending more than that on, we'd hired people and people are expensive. In itself, that's not a problem, because if we kept growing in that way, we'd be profitable long before we ran out of money. The bigger problem was we were pouring, we were marketing, we were like, we just need more customers like this, we're going to be profitable soon, we're just going to get revenue from wherever we can, we get all these new customers in, just keep doing what we're doing, it's all great. But the second problem was there was some churn on the horizon. And it takes us to part 2. So the following month, June, kind of flatlined like this, and we're like, okay, we had that happen just after launch as well. It might just be a temporary thing. It's the summer, people are going away, and it kind of recovered, and then this, and then this. And now we're like, what the hell's going on, right? And this is kind of concerning, again, because we're spending a hell of a lot more than that each month on team. And so we did what any kind of smart entrepreneurs would do. We freaked out. We took a step back and we're like, we have to figure out what's going on here. We need to know why this is happening. Firstly, so there's 2 aspects to why. The first one is very simple. What's the immediate cause? And what I mean is, if revenue is going down, that's either there aren't people coming in the top of the funnel anymore, and do we need to fix that? Or people are kind of taking out trials, but they're not. We actually didn't have trials at this point, but if you do, then that's another possibility. People are taking out trials, they're not converting. You can figure out what's up with that. In our case, it was churn. It was a lot of customers still coming in, and then a lot of them canceling. This was our revenue. This was our churn, our revenue churn for the months after launch. You might be forgiven for thinking, okay, that's fine. If that's dollars churned, that kind of makes sense because you were growing so fast, so you're going to churn more dollars. That's kind of normal. But this was percent churn. So it kind of hovered 5% at the beginning and then up to 10% and before the year was out, like we were over 15% churn, and we hadn't been paying nearly enough attention to this. And from speaking to people, it turns out it's a very common thing. I've spoken to a lot of people even over the last couple of days who have kind of seen this happen, kind of big launch and then plateau, and it's from people dropping out. Rob even talked a few years ago at MicroConf. Drip did something pretty similar. It's something that happens a lot, and we just needed to figure out why, and we needed to fix it. The bottom line was we didn't have a product that was exactly what our market needed yet, or we didn't have product market fit. And we tricked ourselves into thinking we did because of that big revenue, right? We kind of, in my head, if you made that much money, then you had a bit of fit. I don't think it's always the case. I think what we were seeing is partly because a lot of us have got kind of better over the years, we've learned how to launch something to revenue instead of launching it to nothing. Like, we've learned how to build that audience. Sometimes what happens is those people are signing up, they don't know yet whether it's going to work for them. And they cut you some slack because they know it's new, and it might take a few months before they decide, yeah, this is definitely not right for me. And they're more loyal. They've been following along. There's a lot of loyalty to you from those early launch customers. It doesn't mean you've got something right yet. It means that they see that there's a problem. Your solution might not quite be the one they need. So what could we have been looking at? We took the high revenue as a sign that we were doing right. Like I said, churn is a good thing to look at. The downside of churn is that you find out much later. So churn is it's a very lagging indicator. It tells you immediately that you had a problem 4 months ago. It's the kind of you need to be watching it, but it doesn't tell you stuff early. There's other things like a lot of people like to look at these kind of survey kind of questions. So there's NPS, where there's a whole methodology around NPS, but the bit I'm kind of interested in here is the idea of how likely are you to want to recommend this to people, right? If you can get a sense of whether people are like, I am definitely going to recommend this, like I love it, versus the number of people who are saying I can't see myself telling anyone about this, it's a useful thing to know. The naked question is this idea of how disappointed would you be if you did not have this? This has kind of been popularized a lot this year by Superhuman. You may have seen they said they used this to kind of measure how close they were to product market fit. They got it from Sean Ellis. Sean Ellis, I think, got it from somewhere else. But it's a useful thing to. Sean's benchmark is you should have 40%. If more than 40% of people are saying they'd be very disappointed to not have your thing, that can be a good indicator. But also just speaking with customers as much as possible. You get a feel for this stuff. You get a feel for, are people loving this, or are they just kind of along for the ride and they're still figuring out whether you can help them and so on. Now because we had hired, we weren't speaking with customers nearly as much as we should have been. We'd kind of created this abstraction layer between us and customers because we weren't in the support inbox anymore. We had someone for that. And we weren't doing all the demo calls because there was someone doing that. And so us as the founders we were a little bit abstracted away, and it wasn't a great idea. So Sean Ellis, Growth Hackers, if you haven't reached product market fit yet, and again, even if you have revenue, you may not have this product market fit, it is critical to keep your burn low and focus on increasing the percentage of users that say they'd be very disappointed about your product. The founders should engage existing and target users to learn how to make your product a must-have. So he's basically saying, if you don't have product market fit yet, don't spend money and learn everything you can from customers. What were we doing? Spending lots of money, and we built this abstraction layer between us and customers. So we need to do something about it. And there's two things here. One is a short-term thing. We were very much on our way to running out of money because we had been spending on the assumption that revenue was going to keep growing in the way that it had been. So there's this short-term thing of we need to not run out of money, and then there's a longer term of how do we fix the churn. And I'm going to look at both of those things. In the short term, if you are in that position, it's not a nice position to be in, but you have a few options. You can get rid of some of those people that you're spending so much money on. Not a nice thing to do. You can look at taking less money yourselves or doing kind of pay cuts across the team. Again, not a great thing to do. Josh Pigford, Baremetrics, ended up doing that one. He's talked a lot about that online, but they kind of said everyone on the team needs to take less money because we've screwed up here and we're running out. Or you go back to the investors and you say, can we have a little bit more, please? You need to persuade them that it's a temporary enough thing that, that it's something you can fix. And other income, something like consulting, this is an interesting one because probably most people in this room have done this at the beginning of a SaaS, where you've got your consulting income, that's paying the bills while you get the SaaS off the ground. But it's something that you can do later as well. And it's in a way, it's an easier thing to do at that point because if you're anything like us, we had a lot of customers who were saying, I want what you're doing, I want to buy in, but I don't have the time to even implement it myself. Can you do that for me? And we were like, yeah, we can. We were the authority in doing that at that point. It was an easy sell, and we were like, we'll set up the product for you. We'll set up all your email marketing things around that. It was time consuming for us, and I think if you're running a SaaS, you don't want to be doing things like that. That's not the end goal, but it can be something to do in the short term. Does anyone reckon they know which one of these we ended up doing? Or which couple we ended up doing? Anyone want to guess? Put your hand up. A few people want to guess? Yeah, you're all right. We did all of them at one time or another. We had to do. We ended up having to, at one time or another, do every one of these. And it's not a nice thing to have to do, particularly some of them. But that's what we had to do to not run out of money. That was how we had to fix the mistakes we'd made. And once we'd done that and we had enough runway that we could actually fix the problem properly, we're like, okay, so smaller team now. Like we can figure this out. And we start asking, why are people churning? And I think there's a related but often more important question where kind of the temptation is to look at those people who have left and be like, why did they go? Right? What did we do wrong? What would have made them stay? And actually sometimes more useful is this. Why are the people who are staying, right? Because on the same day, we'd have someone churn, and then we'd have someone writing on Twitter, like, this is the best thing ever. Finally got RightMessage running. It's badass. This was like, my conversion rates to my email list have 5x'd overnight. Totally in love, already seeing higher conversions. I'm learning about my visitors. It might be the best money I've ever spent on my business. And then 5 minutes later, someone's like, yeah, this doesn't, I don't get it, I don't want it. And so we're like, we need to go and talk to these people. And we need to go and talk to kind of both groups, but it's something that we don't all love doing necessarily, speaking with the people. But we needed to do a lot of it. And so we went to the people, all these people who were saying great things, and we were looking, we could see from their accounts, there were some people who were absolutely crushing it. And we went and spoke with them. I'm actually going to correct that to listened to them. And there's an important distinction. Those calls kind of, ideally, you should be saying as little as possible, and you just want to be hearing from them. Like, we're just guiding the conversation. And there are all these times when you can speak with customers that, like I said earlier, we weren't doing these because we had a team that were kind of doing these things and filtering bits and pieces back to us. When we started doing things like the onboarding calls, the customer support, we ended up actually learning a lot about what what was going on in our customers' worlds anyway without even directly asking them. Like, we just got a better feel for how everything was going. Post-cancellation is an interesting one. We ended up using the Baremetrics cancellation insights widget. It's something you drop it into your app. It swaps out your cancel, I want to cancel button for a I want to cancel, but let's get some feedback from you first button. So it just, when they press cancel, it asks them why. We found this work. This was a helpful kind of way to get answers from everyone. We hacked the product in two ways. We changed two things about it. One was that we made the comment required. And I know people have had mixed results trying this, and the fear is, or sometimes the result is people just kind of press a few keys on the keyboard, they don't care, like whatever, we actually found it worked really well for us. We got some really valuable insights. But like I say, other people have found more success with things like just having a straight cancel button and then maybe emailing afterwards and getting more info. The second hack that we made was that when you picked one of the multiple choice answers, the prompt for what to type into the comment box would change. And this also really helped. So they press I'm switching to another product, which in itself isn't such a useful piece of information. The prompt would become, which product are you switching to and why, if you don't mind sharing. So again, we were getting really useful insight. And not automating our lifecycle emails also helped us get a lot of insight. And what I mean is, if you've got a couple of trials, you've got a small handful of trials coming in each day or each week, and a churn here and there, that's not such a volume that you can't handle that yourself. So Brennan and I started, when someone signed up, we would just reach out manually. We switched off all these advanced automations that we had, and we just reached out, and we were like, hey, thanks for signing up. Let's find either why, or how can we help, or how can we make sure you're successful. It was just, and we'd maybe look up who they were, and it was tailored. And we'd tell them it wasn't automated as well, because people are expecting automated ones now. And sometimes we even do it when someone signs up to the email list. We don't do it for everyone, but sometimes someone signs up to the email list, just reach out, introduce ourselves and see how we can help. And just those organic conversations can give so much insight. So you don't have to automate everything. There comes a point when you do have to, and when you don't have to, it's not necessarily worth doing. Like I said, the priority if you don't have that product market fit yet, if you don't have just more customers coming in than you can handle and churn under control and all the rest of it, you want to be, the priority is to learn. And you can't do that if you've automated away every touch point between you and the customer. And so we started trying to figure out, why are people using the product? Why are the people succeeding? What's the benefit? And what were they doing before? What do people do when they're not using RightMessage yet? What have they been doing to get that benefit before? This has been talked about once or twice at this conference, the jobs to be done idea. Everything is replacing something else that people were doing. For us, initially, what we saw was that a lot of people were doing nothing. Personalization was such a new thing that most people were switching from, directly as in terms of competitors, switching from they didn't have a product to do it with before. So we needed to look one level deeper. We were helping increase conversions. What are they doing for that right now? And how can we fit in that space in their head? I really like this quote. Questions are places in your mind where answers fit. If you haven't asked the question, the answer has nowhere to go. It hits your mind and bounces right off. So it's this kind of idea, there is a space in someone's head where they are this is my email marketing tool, that goes there. This is what I do to increase conversions. There was no space in their head for this is what I do for personalizing my website. And so we started thinking about that. The other place I've seen this always stood out to me. Does anyone know, can anyone set what this scene is? iPhone launch, awesome. Yes, this is 2007, first launch of the iPhone. And there were it was described in three ways. It was a touchscreen, widescreen touchscreen iPod, and the crowd kind of went wild. And then Steve Jobs said, it's a revolutionary mobile phone, and the crowd went even more wild. And then he said, and it's a breakthrough internet communication device. And about 3 people in the crowd kind of went, woo, because no one knew what that was. And actually, the iPhone was so revolutionary, like it wasn't a smartphone. It was so far ahead, like it was a brand new product. But what they'd recognized is that if they had described it in the way of like, it's this brand new thing, people don't get it. There's no space in their head for that. So they said it's a phone, it's a smartphone, but this is how it's better. Another way of putting it, like you need competition. This is what we found. We were like, if people are switching from nothing, it's hard for them to figure out what this is. This is why people are churning. They're coming in, they're trying it, they're not certain that they're doing things the right way because they've got no experience of this before. And they're kind of saying, it's a nice to have. It's, I wasn't doing something for this before, I don't need something for it now. And so we looked at like, how can we pivot to have more competition, essentially? And that was what we tried. We said, people are using this to get more conversions. Right now, what are they doing for that? Well, they've got these email opt-in tools on their website that don't do any of the stuff that we do, but that's what they're doing right now to get more people onto their email list or to sell through their website. And so we tried switching to that. We said, like, we are like your existing opt-in tool, but we will get you more opt-ins, and then we go on to say how, and now there's a space in their head that we can fit into. Churn started to do this, so downwards is good. We crossed back below 10%. It's not where we want it to be yet, but it's moving in the right direction. And it means revenue has started to do this again. This is since the plateau. So we plateaued down to about 17K. We're now back up at 28, 29. So things are going back in the right direction. There's more to do, but we kind of know what that is because we're speaking to our customers so much more. We're not doing everything we can to try and grow revenue as quickly as possible to feed a team because we are spending less now. And we're in a comfortable place. We can keep, hopefully, this going up and to the right in a sustainable way, higher when we absolutely need to. And that's where we're at. I hope there's been something in here that's been helpful that you might be able to use in your business or use in the future. And thank you very much.